All right, party people in the place to be. This is the GIB plus the homie survivalists. We are
What's up?
under
What's
the
up?
underground, live and direct from Finland. We're broadcasting, or maybe not live and direct. We're podcasting, I should say. Here, hanging out. This is a Thursday, just chilling. It's finally a bright day here. I don't know how you've been experiencing this summer, but man, this has been a weird summer. We have chapters of the summer where it's just gray and rainy and crazy. I mean, there was that one time you were at the studio where it was almost like some torrential downpour, right? And now we have like this heat wave. How you guys keeping cool with all this heat wave?
Well, it's hot. It's pretty tropical here, especially in my little home studio. I'm sweating like a pig, so yeah. But I'm enjoying it. It's been a good time to be on vacation, and we've been at the beach with the kids and stuff. So
okay,
I've been enjoying.
They got any Uima hollies by you guys? Any swim places?
Well, yeah, there is
just beach.
There
beach
is
life?
a swimming pool, but we usually go to the lake or the seaside. It's like an hour's drive to Yyteri Beach in Pori.
Yeah, Yyteri.
Which is Finland's like one of the best beaches. So
yes, sir.
Huge sand dunes and stuff.
We went to Pori Jazz that time, actually, when we were hanging out with you guys.
Yeah.
And I think that was another one of these rainy summers because some of the Pori Jazz was rained out, and then we couldn't even go to Yyteri, to the beach, because we drove by there, but we didn't actually get into the water or anything like that. So it's kind of like hit or miss type of summer spot. Anyway, so what we're about today, this is our first podcast opening up our story to the world at large. This is Under the Underground. We've been sort of doing this now since, I guess, sometime in 2023. Me and Survivalists were just chopping it up like early this week, trying to retrace the timeline and figure out, we just dropped our album July 23rd, which was also my birthday. We released Deep Strata, Low Static, our first debut album. We've been pushing singles and a bunch of content in other platforms, but this was a proper 12-song album. It's streaming on all the channels, all the platforms. So go run it up. But I guess the thing that we were trying to figure out is like, because sometimes you get involved in this creative work and just stuff happens so fast that you don't take time to step back and figure out, how did this even happen? How did we get to this point? So it's like figuring out the origin stories. But I guess something to be said about maybe starting off. What do you remember about where we first met? Let's kind of put you on the spot on that.
Well, that's kind of easy question. I've even written a short verse about it.
Oh man, that was dope. Actually, yeah. What are you gonna do with that track? Yeah,
it's one of our. I'm hoping there's others who'll join that one. If you're listening, write your verses, homies. But
yes, sir.
I wrote a verse about how me and GIB met. It's easy to remember because it was one of Kasi's, who's the kind of the grand old man of the whole community, the godfather, if you want to say it that way. He's always throwing parties, and that it was one of those cases. I think it was his birthday in his at his villa down by the sea in Espoo. So we were there just having a good time, and I'd already heard like one of GIB's tracks together with the Finnish dude in Helsinki. You were featuring on his track, and then I heard it, and I thought that, hey man, I need to talk with this fellow if I ever get to. And then I saw him, and I just went to say hi and introduce myself. Then we started talking hip hop, and I think from there it evolved pretty naturally. Of course, we had a lot of like intentional, syncing and meetups and tons of, video calls and stuff when I was living at the ranch in the countryside, and I was far from everything. And GIB
Oh,
had me connected a lot,
yeah.
many times, and we were planning stuff together, even before we even knew Under the UG would ever exist. But yeah,
And that ranch what is that featuring? Because we were doing some numbers around the shack of survivalists,
yeah, yeah.
and I feel
There
like
was this
you caught.
there was this like sauna building in at the ranch in the
Yeah.
yard, and it looked like this small red cottage, like really old, built somewhere in the early is it the 1900s, and I had it featured in some of my home videos. Like
Yeah,
I
that's
used
what
to do
I was
home
just about to
movies.
interrupt you, man. That one of the first things I saw from Homie was this this psycho thriller series, or what was that? What in the world was I watching, man?
Yeah, I was doing basically like a
Where
proof of concept
yeah.
cinema piece, like a short movie or something. It was called The Law of Poe, which means things get so weird you don't even know if it's like satire or
Oh, if it's real
real.
or yeah, like
Yeah,
surreal,
so
yeah.
I was filming those things whenever I had time in between taking care of the baby and
Yeah.
the other kid, and doing home chores and stuff. But I had time because we were basically like almost isolated at that ranch during the COVID years, and so I was just
Okay.
filming these cinematic videos around the
I you
ranch.
gotta you gotta find some way to bubble that up to the surface for other people to check it out, because this was like, again, we went to go stay with them. This actually, yeah, this is the same story with this Bori Jazz Festival not far from where they live, so we went to go stay at the ranch or whatever, and then you pulled out all the tapes, or I don't know if it was, I'm sure it was there, because because you showed me a bunch of stuff maybe at the studio as well, but I think those things you pulled out at the ranch, because like that thing had me dying, man. Like I mean, it was super creative, but there was that one, what I'm talking about, where the dude, I mean, I don't even remember it was towards the end,
Yeah, I know
where
what you're
like
talking about.
you know what scene
Yeah.
I'm talking about, like where I don't know if he was trying to drop the bomb or something. I don't even remember. I have to see that
Yeah,
again, man. It had me dying.
the grim voice of the Antichrist.
That's right, yeah. It was something. It was like some crazy. Oh man, it was something so hilarious. It was like, you ever laugh so hard you had to, like, you get in pain, man. I had to like step away or something, because I hadn't had a good laugh like that in a minute. Man, we gotta find a way to showcase that. So, anyways, that all to say, for those that only know Survivalists as an MC or producer, it's a multi-layered brother here with creativity oozing out the veins. I think the thing that that's what's interesting to kind of reflect on origin stories, because I feel like I had a lot of conversations with other people over the years about like how do groups come together. Like I've been a part of, like, different crews. I know you ran, even like you and your brother were doing something at some time. I mean, we you kind of come in and out of crews, you know, uh, and people join, add on, and then people bounce, and people split up and all this sort of thing. And I feel like I think it's a desire, but it's always a question mark of how you find people that you could kind of gel with and run with, and all that. And I think the thing to highlight in our story is, like, it wasn't even anything. It was sort of like both of us were sort of committed to a path, and kind of committed to a craft, and even just a mindset. Because I think we have a lot of intersection between not just how we, our exposure to hip hop and the type of hip hop that we immerse ourselves in, but even just the way that we kind of view life. You know what I'm saying? So all these kind of intersecting worldviews that, like, when you kind of find a running partner like that, I think it's worth kind of highlighting the story to get people understanding, like, how these storylines kind of come into being. And I think the thing, so we at that birthday party, and one of the things that we were just talking about this earlier was, like, at that time, because we're a part of a bigger creative community, right? This Cartano, El Cartano Studios, and so many people coming in, so many different genres and styles of hip hop and walks of life, but I think in that environment, there's so much creativity going on. There's always somebody's always pulling out a beat. The very first gathering I was a part of, we lingered at the end and had a song challenge and, split up in teams, and it was just popped off. And I think like that seems to be, there was a lot of that going on. I mean, you were featuring on different things. I think there was like an anthem that you guys were working on. And so many different creative projects. And then there was a collection of different individuals that were coming together, also trying to work on some big targets and, collab projects and all that. And in the midst of that bigger group, then I think just this regular, like, it's one thing when you kind of meet up with the homies and all that, but it's another thing when you're focused on a task. And so you and I started having calls, and we're running ahead with vision. And I think in the midst of all that, like, I think there was a turning point in all that, because we were working with a lot of other beats at the time, and we started having this conversation because that was coming in somewhere at the end of 2022. And as we were looking ahead to the next year, we have to go back to the receipts. I mean, we have this. You should see this Telegram thread that we have between me and Survivalist, because I feel like I don't know how many words are in that thread, man. But it's like you have to deploy some AI agent to kind of figure out.
It took me like almost half an hour to scroll back all the. Basically there's a conversation for almost every single day from 2022 till this day. So it's huge.
Honestly, that's like the backdrop of why we need an outlet like this to start, because just to kind of invite others into the conversation, because it's like a never-ending conversation with me and dude, and I think the thing is, it's good to just stop and think about what have we even been like, what ground have we even covered, because it's just so much happening all the time. But back on this thing, so at the end of 2022, peering into 2023, it was kind of dawning on us that we're approaching the 50th anniversary of hip hop, on August 11th, 2023. And there was a lot of different threads that were going on, trying to figure out, like, what does that mean for the art form? Like, to come in at kind of a semi-centennial, there's different mindsets now in hip hop than the foundation. Some of it is improved, and some of it is like, have we lost some elements and stuff like that? And so there was some talks about, like, could we do anything like that? This just come and go and like doesn't make any difference in Finland. And so we were thinking, like, we definitely need to have something to commemorate it. But in the midst of that, and I can't remember if you were already you were already throwing me some of your own beats, just naturally maybe sharing it, but somewhere in that conversation, maybe again it's in the thread somewhere hidden, but somewhere you threw this beat over and like immediately resonated. And like this kind of, I saw this image of like these smoke signals going up when you shared the beat. Like, it was a visualization that dropped on me of like, these kind of ancient smoke signals that are sent up, kind of, signaling, kind of, getting attention and that sort of thing. And I think that kind of served as the basis for that song project. Well, you want to just say a couple words about smoke signals, what we were trying to do with that?
Yeah,
because actually, I think that was a really significant.
Yeah, I was scrolling the thread yesterday when we were
okay
talking about this, and trying to reminisce, like, how did it go down, where did we start, what was the turning point of things. And I actually found the date that I shared the beat for Smoke Signals, and back then it was, the name of the beat was something like Zoid versus Inhumanoid or something really weird.
Wait, it was that for that one?
Yeah, I think.
Oh yeah,
I think so.
Okay,
because I had I was thinking,
I
like,
remember
this
now.
is such a cartoonish thing. But then when Aki heard it, he saw like Indian tribes sending smoke signals, which is like,
that's right.
That could be like a cartoony thing as well. But like he saw it like in a like kind of a more epic context. Like this is now we're sending a signal out there. So and the original beat, it sounded way more choppy. I was checking it out yesterday, and it was like.
Hold on a second. What'd you say?
Can you put on a show for me?
Yeah. Can you wait a minute though? Yeah. My niece coming in. Do you want to say hi real quick, Emma? Just wave real quick.
I can't quite see your face, but yeah.
Okay, all right, that's
hand.
all good. Anyways,
anyways, I was talking about like the original version of that beat. It sounded much more choppy. It was much more crude and kind of raw, which I kind of like still. Like, I thought it's interesting. Like, and then the end product was like much more polished, and it had less of the grittiness in it. But nevertheless, that was the time. Like, I was just shooting out beats. I did a ton of beats back in 2022, 23. I think I produced most of the beats for the Deep Strata Low Static album back in
at that
22,
time.
23. I found something from like January, February, March 2023. I was sending like the Headshroom beat and others, like they're now part of the album. So it's been like 2 years,
okay.
2-3 years in the making.
What was the date? What was the date that you saw from the Dogzilla joint, the Smoke Signal track?
I took a screenshot, but I just dumped my
entire. Okay. Well, let's come back to that because I'll be curious to know, because that would help fill in the timeline.
Yeah, it's around maybe I'd say October 22 or something.
Okay, that sounds about right. Yeah. Because that, because their sort of the vision was catalyzed. And I think then as that project was coming together, so basically we were starting to commemorate the 50th anniversary. You had some dope lines where you were bigging up everybody from, on the breaker side to the DJs to the MCs, of course, and kind of going through some of the greats.
But you
and even
remember
the
that
graffiti
process as well. I was just name dropping a bunch of my like influential rappers that I really felt,
that's
but
right.
Then we felt like this is gonna be too much, like just name dropping some bunch of cats, but instead we want to like talk about the hip hop culture as a larger phenomenon. And then I rewrote the verse.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. That's a good recollection. Yeah.
Because you were sparring me a lot. Like, hey, what if you expand a little? And then I took it back to the drawing board.
Yeah. And I think that's a good insight into kind of the working dynamics that's starting to come together between us, because, it's this type of dynamic, when you're used to creating on your own and then you come into a partnership or a communal context, there's a different layer of creativity that sort of enters through the door, and I think, all of us, have our own creative biases, and, we have a way that we see the world, but it's a process of like any partnership requires a learning posture from both parts, because obviously like it can't be one individual just setting the tone. Like we both have to draw from each other's strengths and then take that somewhere. I need to help take your strengths somewhere as much as you take in my strengths in a way that like the end result is even something greater. Like one person, it's that exponential dynamic that enters in. If you can lift 1,000 pounds on your own, and I could do the same, it's like together we're lifting 10,000 or whatever. I don't know all the exponential factors, but creativity somehow shares something to that effect.
Yeah, for sure. Because when you fortify somebody, or you rather, the saying of the wise guy who pulls out the wisdom from others, it's a little bit same with the skills and potential. If you are the type who sees the potential in others and you start pulling up the potential, then suddenly you're making the other person really powerful in the creative sphere, because they can complement themselves. They have like they have skill sets that the that support the other skills, and without that, they would be like in a much more narrow lane with their skill and creativity. But once you have people who can fortify others in that sense, it creates such a big effect on the other people, and then they becomes so much more powerful in their creativity, and the end result is many times much greater. Of course, there's a lot of pushing that needs to be done, and challenging others, and I think that's basically what our story has been about. There's been raw skill that has been then just pushed forward, and I think our fresh album is like the outcome of this journey, basically.
Yeah, that quote that you were saying is purpose inside a person's heart is like a deep well, but then a man of understanding draws it out.
Yeah.
And that's something that you benefit from in a partnership. And so then, as we were then marching towards, like, as that song became a reality, we realized that even within this larger collective of creative individuals, that you and I had something unique going on, and then that catalyzed the idea of a real partnership, and do like a dynamic duo type of thing. And so I think that's when it really, like, even our working cultures, we're homies and we're cracking jokes and stuff. And I think, like, when we were, there was something, I'm trying to remember. I think it was in the context of some of these songs that we were starting to conceive of, and it came as a joke. Like, I think he threw something out there that was so under the ground. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, this was like, it was like, so I don't remember, like, because we got this shared context of places like Project Blowed and stuff in LA, or the underground scene in that context. And even in Finland, this whole Motor Records kind of episode in Finnish history.
Yep. Basically lyrical rap that is just done in a really lo-fi way with 4-track cassette recorders and stuff, which I used to have, like my previous album before this album that we now did. My EP was done with a 4-track cassette recorder, so that's the context, like, that's the quality,
And so it kind of came out as a joke, and we said, like, hey, that's like under the underground. I mean, like, because we're saying, like, is this sound a little too raw for, like, for the type of people that we run after? But then somehow that thing, as a joke, actually started to kind of surface into a real thing. Like, rather than actually, like, that's actually what we exist for. Like, a little bit, like, we're definitely influenced by the underground, but we're also, like, there was a lot of, when I dial it back to, we used to have the radio show and kind of run around in New York when we were living there. It was a lot of excitement going on, like, back in the heyday of Raucous Records, and like Fat Beats was like an institution. It's now come back. Fat Beats has come back, but it was just so much, all this stuff going around New York City. I was living there at the time, and that kind of that ethos that was emerging, it felt like something of a revolution. I mean, like, I remember Talib Kweli, he on one of these, I don't know if it was on the Lyricist Lounge, like one of those albums, he was talking about this manifesto, and it's like, manifesto, oh wait, they're like, these dudes are punching up, and it felt like it was sort of, I think it was against the backdrop of there was a lot of shallowness that was, and it's always going to be the case. Like, you always have this sort of divide between the stuff that most people hear is just kind of the stuff that's just palatable for mainstream audience, and you always have, like, the rebels or whatever that want to produce a different type of music. But there was a different episode that happened where what was underground became mainstream for a minute. Like, Raucous was pulling in large coin at the time. I mean, they started blowing up, And there's a lot of theories behind like how did this kind of raw underground collective, you know, like really become the mainstream, and they started, you know, collabing with these mainstream artists and all that sort of thing. That's a whole nother episode. I mean, that type of history is very fascinating. It has a lot of different opinions, but you know, what all that I'm getting at here is like there was something that was unique in hip hop at that time, even to the point where I would go into a record stop and come out with a friend. I mean, it was like a real communal context that when everything became digital, then, you know, there's different ways that we could connect with people digitally, but there was definitely, for me, a missing element of like these core institutions where like it was like people knew you in a sense of like these are people that you were really hanging out with and stuff, and not just sort of in a digital way, you know. And so I guess just in our imagination, as we thought about what the underground represented, like there was a real communal context, but it was also like it didn't really live up to this manifesto and all the kind of ambitions of it. And so there was still kind of,
Come here, boy.
there was still more work to be done in that space. Does that make sense? Like I'm just sort of, I'm pondering, like there was a real sense of connection and purposeful music that was coming out in a certain time. And I think though it never really, like in my mind, I thought it was going to be this major revolution or whatever, like that we're here to kind of take over. And when it got into the place of influence, like some of the music started to change, you know what I'm saying? And it wasn't as sort of revolutionary. It was sort of, well, we're here. We got to make a living too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
I think the industry
anyways,
does it every time there's some conscious change coming through or art form. It's then commercialized, and pretty soon it's gonna be watered down in many ways, and it doesn't feel the same. Because I think a lot of the thing in conscious hip hop is it is raw, and it's coming straight out of you. It's coming from your heart, from your soul. You're basically bleeding on the paper each time you grab the pen, and you have to be kind of honest to yourself, and that's it's like whenever you are honest to yourself, it's pretty rough. What you are putting out there, it's not polished, and I think that's the major difference between really commercial mainstream and pop music. It's very polished, but then there's the, you know, the conscious and true to yourself music, which is, even if the sound wasn't raw, the ideas and the spirit, the vibe in it is raw. And I think that stuff is what really speaks to fans of underground hip hop and conscious rap, and you know, that stuff we were influenced by back in the day.
Yeah. Well, these aren't simple conversations, and you know, it's, you know, we're just kind of trying to look back on history and reflecting it from our vantage point. And obviously, it's not as simple as we're painting it out to be, but it's useful to talk through it and kind of process these raw ideas, you know, to sort of make meaning through kind of the mess. I think as we just think about like what we're trying to be about here, we're probably going to have a briefer episode now. Like I was saying, like on this, our runway now is 8 minutes, just as a heads up, you know. But I think, yeah, it just shows there's a lot to talk about here. But this was the beginning of Under the Underground, and I think that the process that we went through to figure out kind of consistent creative rhythms was interesting, you know. And I think maybe that's for another episode to kind of to talk through how we went to kind of periodic kind of, you know, because we're you know, we both have our whole worlds outside of this, you know. And you know, you got a family, you got your responsibilities, you know. I'm in the tech space, you know. We all got different things that we're doing that, you know, this music has to be done on top of all that. And it's one thing if you're just this full-time artist just going all in and you have, that's all that you're doing, but how do you find those consistent rhythms to create consistently, you know, not just once in a blue moon flash in the pan kind of inspiration, but what does it look like to have consistent rhythms of creation, co-creation, we had many sessions like this, virtual, many sessions in person. So maybe to talk through some of the things that we kind of worked out, because I think it's an interesting. I think there's some things for others to consider. Everybody has their own creative process, but I think utilizing some of these tools that we have today, there's some real interesting things to talk about our journey through that.
Yeah,
so
we're
maybe
definitely
we'll
gonna
reserve
have
that.
a specific podcast episode where we talk about the tools and the methods that we have created and found. We haven't created them, but we found them, because there's others
Yeah.
who are building platforms, and we're on the constant lookout. Hey, what could work? How
Yeah.
how can we express ourselves on these platforms?
Yeah, and some of it is like, because we came from different eras where these tools weren't around. It's like you had to do music in different ways, and I think there's lessons to learn from chapters in history where people didn't have all the tools at their disposal, but then they came up with real creative collaborations and real brilliant ways to kind of test out ideas. And those examples, like we will give an example of this recording studio in Stockholm that I think was very innovative in its time. And they have models, I think, that our generation could take advantage of now, utilizing TikTok and these other things that weren't available for them. But it's like, if we could think about, like, when someone's dealing, creativity thrives in constraints. Like when you get put, when you're in a position of limited resources and constraints, you got to become resourceful and really get things done without the click of a button or just auto generating the solution. And so I think when you have all these click of a button opportunities, you could apply the previous models and examples from history, like when they didn't have it all, because that's how you can make some distinction between how the run of the mill use of these and kind of a creative use of the available tools. So maybe stuff to more explore later. But anything just to kind of land this plane. So we're doing this podcast, and it kind of follows on the theme that we're getting into on our album. The album is called Deep Strata, Low Static. This under the underground context now has created a world of exploration for us. It means something on so many layers, in terms of, like, we're not just content to stay where the underground, like the underground as you know it, because I think there's a whole world to open up even beneath the underground, and that deals with that delves into, like, we're not just speaking from, we're trying to express our own stories in the music, but I think there's also this layer that we're starting to get into that deals with even fictional worlds. I mean, the whole, even Survivalist and who he represents comes from a whole world of imagination and ideas that I think is something you're going to see in the music. We even have a storied world project that we could speak on a little bit. We got a few minutes here, that it's basically recounting the hero's journey. I think many people are familiar with the hero's journey kind of monomyth, that kind of cuts across all cultures. And so we kind of took that context. We have a song that kind of explains the hero's journey, but then within the project itself, there is a narrative that unfolds. And I think that's the type of storytelling that we got plenty more to come and explore on what this underground world really means to us. It's not just kind of what you might suppose in terms of a bunch of MCs in a basement, but I think there's we come from hip hop at its best should draw from the poetic traditions that are even older than 50 years old. And here, I mean, just speak on the Finnish, if you could just say something about these itinerant Finnish farmers that would hop around and spit bars. Is there anything top of mind?
We have a long tradition in poetry in Finland, and it was part of the regular guy who was living in the forest or on a farm, and during the long nights they would entertain themselves by reciting these old lyrics and poems and songs. They were called the runonlausujat. runonlaulajat, and it's an old Finnish tradition, and well, not certainly not a unique one. I think there's similar things happening around the world throughout the ages, but in Finland it was this. It's like an old wise man who can remember a lot of things, and then they would tell stories in the form of poetry, and they would they were really highly valued people. They were walking through the villages, and people would, invite them to sing their songs and speak their poetry, and yeah, and then at some point it was collected. There was groups of people who went out to collect them, and that's how we know about it, basically, because it was mouth to mouth, and that sort of thing could have easily just disappeared eventually. But it's collected and written in books, printed in books. So definitely worth exploring also on these podcasts. So
and that there was that symbol. There's some association, right, that has like the illest dap or something like.
Yeah, it's
it's like this.
The hands of the.
It's like
the runonlaulaja. It's basically hands doing this.
Yeah, so they had some hip hop in them there. They were dapping up that they didn't even realize. Anyway, so under the underground, a world of stories, a world of culture, for the culture. We're about digging from the depths for the culture. Maybe more to explore about that. But for now, this is the Low Static podcast, and really just creating a bridge to the hip hop world. It says, hey, the North got something to say. Something's good coming out of Finland, and come along for the ride. We got plenty of stories to tell. Low static.